In a busy bank lobby, filled with people rushing in and out, one conversation echoed above all others. A humble-looking man, dressed in simple clothes, stood in front of the manager's desk. With calm eyes and a steady voice, he said words that made the entire room go silent. "If you have balance, I'll pay you double." The clients nearby smirked, the employees exchanged glances, and the arrogant manager leaned back in his chair, bursting into laughter. At that moment, no one imagined that these words would flip the entire story upside down. Before we dive deeper into this story, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. More emotional twists and life-changing stories are waiting for you here. The manager leaned forward, still laughing, his voice echoing through the bank as he mocked the man's words. "Pay me double. Do you even understand what you're saying?" he sneered, raising his eyebrows with a mixture of disbelief and arrogance. The room chuckled along with him, as if the man before him was nothing but a fool. Some clients whispered, others shook their heads. To them, it was almost entertaining to see a simple, modestly dressed customer stand up to someone in a suit and tie. The manager crossed his arms and continued, "Men like you come here every day, full of illusions, but empty pockets. Do you really think you can impress me with this nonsense?" The humble man remained still. Not a muscle moved on his face. His calmness, almost unsettling, only fueled the manager's pride. He wanted to crush the man publicly, to make an example out of him. What no one knew, however, was that the game had only just begun. The room waited for an outburst, a protest, anything. But the man did not raise his voice. He simply looked the manager in the eye and said softly, "I don't need to impress you. The truth always reveals itself in time." His words, calm and measured, carried more weight than shouting ever could. A silence swept across the lobby, breaking the laughter of a moment ago. Some customers shifted uncomfortably, sensing that this exchange was no longer just a joke. The manager forced a smirk, but deep inside, he felt a strange irritation. How could someone so ordinary, so unimportant in appearance, speak with such certainty? The client gently placed his hand on the counter and added, "Life has a way of turning tables. Sometimes faster than we expect." Those listening leaned in, curious. His composure contrasted sharply with the arrogance of the man in the suit, and the balance of power in the room was beginning to shift, though no one realized just how much. The manager, unwilling to lose control of the situation, slammed his pen onto the desk and leaned closer to the man. His smile twisted into a smirk as he spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "You talk about tables turning. Please, you can't even afford a decent pair of shoes. And yet you dare stand here, in my bank, talking about paying double." Laughter rippled again among some of the employees. The arrogance in his voice grew heavier with each word, as though belittling the man gave him more power. He pulled out a balanced slip, waving it mockingly in front of the client. "Show me then. Prove you even have a coin to your name. If you can, I'll bow to you right here in front of everyone." The words stung the air like poison. Some customers looked away, ashamed at the cruelty, while others leaned in with morbid curiosity. But the man, he didn't flinch. His calm eyes never left the manager's. "You'll regret speaking that way," he said gently, his tone still controlled, almost prophetic. It was in that moment, though no one knew it yet, that the balance of power had already begun to shift. The atmosphere in the bank shifted. What started as casual laughter was now thick with unease. Customers leaned against counters, employees peeked from behind their desks, and every eye focused on the man who had dared to challenge the manager. The silence was broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioning and the rustle of papers. Even the security guard, who had been standing by the door, stepped closer, curious about how this drama would unfold. The manager tapped his fingers on the desk, impatient and restless. "Well, are you going to show us this miracle balance of yours? Or are you just wasting everyone's time?" The man didn't rush. He reached calmly into his pocket, pulled out a card, and placed it on the counter. His movements were slow, deliberate, almost ceremonial. The way he carried himself began to unsettle the very people who had mocked him moments before. Whispers grew louder across the lobby. Some people now questioned whether they had misjudged him. The tension tightened like a rope ready to snap, and the manager, though still grinning, felt a faint sting of doubt in his chest. The stage was set for a revelation that would shatter every assumption in that room. The manager snatched the card from the counter with a scoff and slid it into the reader. His smirk widened as he prepared to announce the humiliation of the client to everyone in the lobby. But as the screen lit up, The color drained from his face. The account number, the name, the balance. It all told a story he was not prepared for. Right there, in bold letters, the system confirmed what no one had imagined. This simple client was no ordinary man. He was the chief executive officer of the very bank the manager worked for. Gasps echoed across the lobby. Employees froze in shock. Customers covered their mouths, their eyes wide in disbelief. The security guard straightened his posture, suddenly realizing the gravity of the moment. The manager's hands trembled as he pulled the card out of the machine. His arrogant grin had vanished, replaced by a pale mask of fear and regret. The humble man, still calm, looked at him and said quietly, yet with authority that shook the room, "You laughed at me. But today you've learned who I am." The bank fell into complete silence. No one dared move. The tables had turned, and the weight of humiliation now rested entirely on the man in the suit. The manager stood frozen, his hands gripping the counter as though it could keep him from collapsing under the weight of shame. His lips parted, but no words came out. The same voice that moments ago boomed with arrogance was now silent, trembling with fear. All around him, the very employees who once chuckled at his jokes avoided eye contact, their smiles gone. The customers who had enjoyed the mockery now stared at him with contempt. The laughter he fed on had vanished, replaced by judgment. The CEO, still calm, leaned slightly forward and spoke in a voice that was firm, but not raised. "Respect costs nothing, yet it defines everything. And today, you've chosen pride over humility." The manager's knees felt weak. Sweat rolled down his temples. He wished for a hole in the ground to swallow him whole. His arrogance, his cruelty, his mockery, all of it now lay bare in front of the very people whose approval he craved. The balance of power had shifted completely, and he knew there was no going back. This was not just embarrassment. It was a lesson carved into his very soul. The CEO straightened his posture, his presence commanding the room, without a single ounce of arrogance. Every word that followed carried the weight of authority, not just from his position, but from the dignity with which he carried himself. "Power is not measured by how loudly you speak, but by how you treat those you think are beneath you," he said, his eyes locked on the trembling manager. The silence in the bank was absolute. Every employee, every customer, leaned in to hear. The CEO's words were not only for the manager, they were for everyone present. A reminder that respect and humility were worth more than any balance on a screen. He continued, "A true leader lifts others up. A true servant of this institution values every client equally. You failed today, not just as an employee, but as a human being." The manager lowered his head, his pride shattered, his voice lost. The lesson struck deeper than any punishment could. For the rest of the people in that room, those words would linger, a message they would carry beyond the walls of the bank. The atmosphere had changed. What began as humiliation turned into a moment of truth, unforgettable for all who witnessed it. The CEO turned slowly, his gaze sweeping across the lobby. His words were no longer aimed only at the manager, but at everyone who had laughed, mocked, or judged without knowing the truth. Too often, we decide someone's worth by their clothes, their job, or the way they walk through the door, he said. But what truly defines a person is hidden beyond appearances. Respect should never be conditional. The customers shifted uneasily, remembering how quickly they had joined in the laughter. Employees lowered their eyes, ashamed of having sided with arrogance instead of dignity. The humble man, the CEO, had just proven that the one who seems the weakest may hold the greatest strength. The one who looks small may stand taller than all. He paused, letting the weight of his message sink in. Then, with calm authority, he concluded, "Never judge a book by its cover, and never forget, the measure you use against others will someday be measured back to you." The lesson was etched into the silence that followed, a silence deeper than any applause. The CEO picked up his card, sliding it back into his pocket, with the same calmness he had shown from the very beginning. Without another word, he turned and walked toward the exit. No one dared stop him. The manager remained behind the counter, pale and trembling, his arrogance crushed. The employees watched in awe, and the clients whispered among themselves, knowing they had witnessed a story they would never forget. What began as mockery ended as a timeless lesson. Respect all people, no matter their appearance. Arrogance humiliates, but humility elevates. And in that moment, every heart in the room knew one truth. The tables had truly turned. Before we close this story, let me ask you, have you liked, shared, and subscribed yet. Stories like this deserve to reach hearts everywhere, and with your support, they can.